Hey everyone, my name is Gavin Vengeance and welcome back to MyXP. Today I want to talk to you about Final Fantasy IX. The Final Fantasy IX for me was another Final Fantasy game that I absolutely love and hold near and dear to my heart, and I'm every bit a fan as everybody else is with this game, but it didn't always start out that way. Final Fantasy IX I was a little more skeptical of, and I didn't really know if I liked the style that they were going for when I first seen it. Because I was more, used to Final Fantasy VIII and how they kind of went with a more realistic look for the characters and made them a little more proportionate to the environment. So going to Final Fantasy IX, I was kind of like, I don't know why they're going back to this character design style, but I was like, okay, maybe it's going to be a lot better story-wise, or maybe it's going to be an experience that's going to take me by surprise. So I initially didn't really jump at the game when it released, which is odd for me with Final Fantasy, but I did end up having a neighbor that lived, just a couple of houses away from us, and they ended up having a copy of the game as well. Now, I used to go over to their house from time to time, gush about RPGs I was playing, and see what games they were playing, and I remember one day I was just talking about how much I love Final Fantasy VIII to them, and his wife was one that really, really was into the RPGs as well, and she was just kind of like, Final Fantasy VIII? Don't you mean Final Fantasy IX? That's the best Final Fantasy. And I was kind of like, no, I love FF8. Final Fantasy IX looks kind of, childish. And she was like, no. She was like, Final Fantasy IX is by far the best one. You have to play this. So she ended up, taking a copy of the game, popping it into PlayStation, and she passed me the controller. She was kind of like, here, you try it out. And I was like, okay. So start up the game, you're in the dark room there with Zidane, you light up the candle or whatnot, go into the next room, then next thing you know, the guy jumps out there with Bahamut's head on, and you're like, okay, this is a little weird, it's not what I'm used to. But I was like, okay, I'll go with it, I was a little bit taken back, and I was like, okay, would you guys mind if I borrowed this game? She was like, no, by all means. Have a loan of it, she said play through it and enjoy it, let me know what you think. I was like, okay, perfect. So I remember I ended up playing the game and going through it, and I got up to the point with the Lifa tree before they ended up wanting the game back, and they were moving into town. So I didn't have access to the game at the time, and it kind of sucked because I was just starting to get into it. I do remember not liking the Remaster card game because I was so used to Triple Triad, and I love Triple Triad, but I remember going back and playing the game, and like I said, getting up Lifa tree, just getting Amaranth in your party, and they end up taking back and moving away. So I was like, well, how am I supposed to play this game now? No store around at that time was selling the game anymore, and I just didn't have access to it. So it was a few years later before I could actually get my hands on the game again, and I owned a copy of Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, all original copies, no greatest hits or anything like that. And I remember I had a friend in school, and he was like, oh, you own Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, and he's like, I'll trade you my Dreamcast for those games, and I was like, well, I'm still kind of playing FF9, I don't really play FF7 or FF8 anymore, not realizing that they would have such value, and I was like, yeah, the Dreamcast is new, sure, why not? Not realizing the grave mistake I had just made, being like, okay, the Dreamcast is going to end up, losing its support, and the Sega was going to stop making consoles, and I didn't know that at the time, so I was just like, oh yeah, awesome, brand new console for 3 games, what a deal. And I regret that decision to this day. You have no idea just how much I facepalm thinking about why I did that. But yeah, it's just something that happened, and it's a part of that Final Fantasy IX story that I had just gotten. I think it was just 3 or something, and I was just like, okay, I can do without going all the way through this game. But I ended up getting the game again years after that. And I played through it with my fiance, and it was just an awesome experience seeing how she fell in love with the characters, and how much she loved the music and the environments, the battle system, all of it, right? So I ended up feeding off of her excitement for the game, and just falling in love with the characters. Like, I know a fan favorite that everybody has, Vivi, and seeing Garnet's growth, and like every character has such a great backstory, with the exception of Quina, in my opinion, which is a little odd, but it's, again, one of those games that amazing story, amazing characters, awesome battle system. I know a lot of people are critical of the whole trance system, which I can admit is a flaw in my opinion as well. I didn't really like how you didn't have control over when you were going to be able to use your most powerful attacks. Whereas, like, the limit break, you can kind of keep just like putting that off in Final Fantasy VII. But again, I really liked seeing the character transformations for the trance system, so that's one thing that I do like. The other thing I really, really liked as well is just like being able to learn abilities from equipping certain pieces of gear. So you had more incentive to like hold on to the older pieces of gear and get the abilities out of them before upgrading to the better gear stat-wise. I really like that, because that to me encourages you to go and do a little bit more grinding and get the abilities that are going to benefit you more in upcoming battles. The soundtrack, absolute knockout again by Nobuo Uematsu. The man is a genius. I've said it a billion times, and I'll continue to say it. His compositions are the best. Final Fantasy IX is no exception to that. The tracks in there are amazing, especially like everything that he even plays at the very beginning, with like the sword fighting scene and everything. I remember hearing that song. It actually just reappeared in Final Fantasy XIV for the Dancer Job quest, and just hearing that again just like instilled all that nostalgia right back into me, and I was like, man, Final Fantasy IX was such a great game. I didn't really have quite the love for it, like I said in the beginning, but even like my friends that I played the Final Fantasy VII with, like Wayne, was absolutely in love with Final Fantasy IX. He was like, oh, Final Fantasy VIII, I can't play that, but Final Fantasy IX I love, I'm going to go back and play through it. I remember he played through that countless times as well. And it was just one of those games that, again, like I said, it's just something I didn't really appreciate, but now I have such a deep appreciation for it, and I understand what they were going for, how they were going back to Final Fantasy's roots, and really going for that fantasy feel, and making sure that each of the characters were lovable in their own way, and they all have their own incredible backstories. The overarching story itself was fantastic. Although I do wish they would have kept a certain somebody as the last boss and not just like introduce this random like entity as the last boss and just be like, that's odd. But I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done before, so it is what it is. It doesn't change the fact that Final Fantasy IX is a fantastic game, so if you get the chance, pick up the game. It's available on pretty much any platform right now. They went and added like the HD filter, the PS4 version, and I think the Steam version as well. So the game's out there. You can get it even on your phones or anything. I mean, if you haven't played it, play Final Fantasy IX. You'll enjoy it just as much as we did. I guarantee it. Yeah, Final Fantasy IX, that's my experience with it. Next video is going to be my experience with Final Fantasy X, which again has been something a little different, so stay tuned for that one in the next video. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate it very much, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.